Hello, hello, Flexi folks! Today we're talking about obturator nerve tension and what to do about it if you have it. So our obturator nerve is one of the main nerves that goes through our inner thigh. And if we have tension in this nerve, sometimes it can masquerade as inner thigh or groin tightness, which can make it really challenging to be working on our middle splits, our straddles, or Frogger type stretches. As a reminder, nerve tension is different from muscle tension. Our muscles are kind of like this stretchy band I have here. They respond really well to being pulled into a stretch. That's something they're designed to be able to do. Our nerves, on the other hand, are more like an electric cord or my iPhone charging cable. They don't really stretch very much. Instead, what they're supposed to do is slide back and forth through all of the soft tissue in our body. You can think about it kind of like a piece of yarn sliding through a straw. So what happens if we try to pull on a nerve as if we were stretching it like a muscle and it's stuck, it's not able to slide like it's supposed to, it's going to respond by telling the nearby muscles to contract to prevent it from being stretched more because it doesn't feel safe in that position. So what we can do if we've got tension in nerve is do a nerve glide, which is a really gentle exercise to help it slide a little bit before we do deeper stretching work to make sure it's sliding around like it's supposed to and it's not stuck in a position where as soon as we stretch, we're tugging on it too much and it's going to respond by tightening up our muscles even more. So today I'll show you two different ways you can test to see if you've got tension in your obturator nerve and give you two options for doing a gentle nerve glide if you do have any nerve tension there. So let's take a look. Before we even get into the tests, let's do a quick frog stretch just to get a baseline of what our inner thigh flexibility is feeling like today. So I want you to keep this easy because we haven't done any kind of a warm-up. We're just going to find our frog stretch with our knees splayed out to the side. And you can do your frogger with your feet under your knees or your feet touching, whichever one feels like a better version of the stretch for you. But I want you to find your frog stretch, just holding it for a couple of moments, making a mental note. How far apart can we get those knees and kind of what's the intensity of the stretching sensation we're feeling in those inner thighs. Then we'll go through either one or both of the nerve tension tests that we do. For folks who find that you have nerve tension, I want you to do 10 to 15 nerve glides on each leg and then come back to your frog stretch afterwards and see does it feel a little bit more comfortable. Okay, let's take a look at the tests. For our first test, you're going to want to be able to sit in a chair with our torso nice and lifted. So we're going to start seated, and I'm going to take one leg, open it about to the side as far as I need to feel a very gentle stretch in the inner thigh. Something that's like 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10 intensity. Nothing really crazy. If you've got very flexible hips, and you can open those legs really, really far, and it still doesn't really feel like a stretch at all, go ahead and do the second test in this video. But for my friends with tighter hips, or for folks who just feel that really light sensation, we don't need to do anything crazy in this position. So we're going to open that leg out to that comfortable stretched position. And here, keeping our leg and our hips in the same position, all we're going to do is round our neck by looking down towards the floor. Does that make the stretching sensation in the inner thigh any more intense? And you can try that a couple times. Lifting your head, looking on down, noticing are the sensations in the inner thigh changing at all? If they're not, we can make this rounding a little bit bigger, rounding through our upper back. Make sure that's not tilting your hips. We're just rounding through the back and the neck. So my hips and that leg are staying in the same position. And notice it, when your back and or your neck is rounded, does that make that inner thigh stretch feel a little bit more intense? If it does, it's a really good chance that's because of a little bit of nerve tension in that obturator nerve. Why is that? That's because we didn't change any of the muscle length for any of the muscles that were in that stretch. We weren't moving our leg or our hips. But what does happen when we're rounding the neck or that upper back, that's giving that obturator nerve just a little bit more of a stretch along our spine up towards our skull as we're rounding that back. So we're giving it a little bit of a tug, so that's why we're feeling it a little bit more intensely. If you have a little bit of nerve tension, then we can do a nerve glide to help that nerve get a little bit unstuck in that position. So for folks who that last test was positive, we can turn this into a nerve glide to help that nerve slide around a little bit and not be quite so stuck where it's getting pulled on really, really tightly. The nerve glide for this looks very similar to the test we just did, but we're going to be a little bit more intentional about when we're rounding through our neck. So we're going to start sitting up nice and tall in this position. When we open our leg out to the side, we're going to look up towards the ceiling. This puts the nerve on just a teeny bit of slack through the top of our nerve. And as that leg goes out to the side, it's pulled a little bit more towards the knee. So it's slid more towards our knee. I only want you to go out until you're feeling that kind of 3 out of 10 intensity stretch. Our goal is not to make this a crazy hip stretch. So just feeling a light sensation in the inner thigh. As we bring that knee back in, we're gonna tuck our chin round our neck. So that lets the nerve go on slack by our knee, and we're tugging it more up towards our head. So knee opens out to the side, we look on up, knee closes, we look on down. And we're gonna do that about 10 to 15 times on one leg, and then we can do about 10 to 15 times on the other leg. The second test can be a better option for folks with a little bit more hip flexibility who may or may not be able to feel that inner thigh stretch in that seated position. For this test, you're going to want your foot to be able to slide on the floor. So you can see I'm wearing socks. That works really great if you're on carpet or on hardwood. But if you've got sliders, 4 feet, that actually works really great as well. The idea is going to be the same. What we're going to do is we're going to find a comfortable inner thigh stretch. We're going to change the position of our spine and our neck to give that nerve a little bit of a tug and see, does that change the sensations we're feeling in our inner thigh. So the stretch we're going to start in, we're going to have one leg straight out to the side, one knee bent. This is our half middle split position. And I want you to slide out just until you're feeling that comfy, easy inner thigh stretch. So we're intentionally not trying to slide out to our deepest stretch, our 10 out of 10. Holy heck, this is really hard. I want this to be super gentle, just barely feeling like a stretch, 3 out of 10 intensity. So from this position, we're gonna keep our legs in the same spot. First, we're just gonna round through the neck. We're gonna tuck our chin towards our chest, look towards our crotch, and then look forwards. A couple of times. Noticing, is the sensation you're feeling in the inner thigh changing at all as you're changing the position of your head? If it's not changing, we can make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to show this sideways. Really important not to move the position of our hips, so we're not going to introduce any pelvic tilt. All we're going to do is round our back. So it's like I'm bringing my forehead towards the floor as I'm tucking my chin towards my chest, and then lifting up. So as we're rounding our back and our neck, but not moving our hips, is that making that inner thigh stretch feeling a little bit more intense? If it feels a bit more intense when your back and your neck is rounded, that would be the positive situation where we probably do have a little bit of nerve tension in the obturator nerve in that leg. Go ahead, try it on both legs. And if either of them feels a little bit more intense than either the chin tucked or the chin tucked and back rounded position, let's go over a nerve glide we can do to help it get a little unstuck. So for folks who found they had nerve tension using that last drill, we can turn that test into a little bit of a nerve glide to help tug that nerve a little bit more towards our knee and then tug it a little bit more towards our head, so we're helping it slide back and forth through our inner thigh and through our spine. So what this is going to look like is I'm going to start as if I'm about to slide out to that half middle split position. So we've got one knee bent, one leg is straight out to the side, no stretch just yet. I'm going to slide that leg out to a comfortable stretch, and that 3 out of 10 intensity we talked about earlier. As I slide that leg out, I'm going to look towards the ceiling. So that's putting the nerve a little bit on slack through my neck and through my spine as it's being tugged a little bit more towards my knee and towards the foot end of my body as I'm going into that stretch. As I slide that foot back to my starting position, then I'm going to round my neck, look towards my crotch. This foot slides out to the side, comfortable stretch, arch the neck, look up. Foot slides back, 0 stretch, round the neck, look towards your crotch. So foot goes out, we arch, foot comes in, we round just a teeny bit. About 10 to 15 times on one leg, 10 to 15 times on the other leg. So for those of you who found, okay, maybe I do have a little bit of nerve tension, go ahead and do those nerve glides. Come back to that same frog stretch you were doing earlier afterwards. Opening those knees out to the side, either with your feet separated or together. Both of them are fine versions of the stretch. And notice, does it feel a little bit more comfortable than before? If so, that's even more reason to think you've probably got a little bit of nerve tension, and doing these types of nerve glides before you do your flexibility training is going to be a great way to make sure that when you're doing your training, we're properly stretching our muscles and we're not tugging on those nerves in positions where they're still a little bit stuck. Couple of final thoughts for folks. When it comes to nerve glides, less is more. More is not more. So that means both when talking about the intensity of the exercise, you want to keep it really, really gentle to not over-tension the nerve, which can potentially aggravate the nerves and make your problems worse. We also want to keep the volume relatively low. This isn't something where doing more of them means your nerves are going to be happier. Usually about 10 to 15 per nerve per day, maybe up to 20 if you're already doing these relatively regularly, is all the volume you need. So if you increase the volume beyond that, there's a chance that you're going to be working your nerves too much and they're going to try to contract things to try to protect themselves a little bit more. So keep the volume and keep the intensity low, and back off if you're feeling any tingly sensations or any really intense sensations in your muscles. Also, if you already have any nerve issues, like you've got sciatica, please talk to your doctor or your physical therapist before doing nerve glides like these, because there's a chance that they could make some of the existing nerve things that you've got going on in your body a little bit more aggravated as opposed to less. So listen to your doctor. And finally, a question I often get when I post about this on Instagram or write about it on my blog is often like, what do I do to fix my nerve tension? So the nerve glides we talked about today are a great short-term solution. These are things that can help you make sure that nerve's sliding around, and they last for like 60 to 90 minutes or something, but it's not a permanent solution. So you'll notice if you do them in the morning and you do your stretching, you're probably going to go back to having kind of the earlier amount of nerve tension that you had later in the day. That's not necessarily a bad thing. That just means it's something that you're going to have to do as part of your warm-up or right after your warm-up before you do your flexibility training every time you train, to get those nerves in a position where they are then ready to do all of your stretchy stuff and they're not in that kind of stuck position. The long-term solution for making this a little bit better over time can have a lot of different approaches to it, but one of the one that's the most applicable for most bodies is working on our active flexibility training. And so that's going to be working on strengthening both the large mover muscles in a particular position. So today we talked about the obturator nerve. Typically that tension would rear up in things like middle splits and straddles. So the big muscle groups that we want to strengthen for those are our adductors, the various inner thigh muscles, as well as our glutes and the outer hip muscles. So both of the big, long inner thigh muscles and then those short, big outer hip muscles that are pulling us into the stretch. We also want to strengthen the smaller stabilizer muscles, which in that position are our deep hip rotators that are responsible for controlling what direction our thigh bone is facing in space. So working on active flexibility drills for the big muscle groups as well as the smaller stabilizer muscle groups are great ways to train our body to be strong in those positions, and that's something that can help make sure the nerves are not getting smushed anywhere weird and that they can keep sliding around like they're supposed to. Foam rolling and other mobilization techniques are also a tool that you've got in your toolkit, but that's something better taught by a physical therapist who can assess your particular situation and see, is that something that's going to make sense for your body based off of the nerve tension sensations that you are feeling individually. Hope you found this helpful. For those of you who do discover that you have a little bit of nerve tension, I'm excited for you to be able to incorporate these nerve glides in your training more regularly, because for me, they made a huge difference. So I really like sharing these with other students who they can make a difference with as well.